just went live. We're live on Periscope and also YouTube. So go ahead, let me know. Good morning, everybody, and we will soon be live on Facebook.
And good morning. We're live on Facebook.
Yes, yes. So, hi everybody. This is Steve Sabadsky, publisher of BuyUBuzz.com, and today it's Friday morning, and Rob Maness and I are going to be talking politics and elections, and we'll do a few seconds or so about what's going on in state and national, and we won't bore you too much. Good morning, Rob. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Steve. Good morning, and good morning, Louisiana and America.
Gotcha, gotcha. So it's a busy day for you, huh?
It is a busy day. Absolutely. Every Friday is a busy day with this show, and I'm a homeschool teacher. We just started eighth grade this year, so we're having a great time with my youngest son.
No kidding.
Enjoying that.
Oh, okay. So, anything statewide that you want to talk about of any importance? Because I know we're going to be talking about a program that is coming up, and so you have anything that you want to report statewide? Otherwise, I'll go ahead and I'll talk about our webinars that are coming up.
Well, we still are monitoring the special elections. Really haven't seen that much in the state rep races. I know that the Secretary of State candidates are continuing to make their rounds around the state. Former Senator A.G. Crow is very popular from what we can tell anecdotally, talking to folks, especially in the Lafayette area, in the Alexandria and Monroe areas. We get a lot of feedback from our supporters around the state that he's very well received. A dark horse, so to speak, in the race may be Ms. Mayor Heather Cloud, who is getting very, very good feedback from interviews that she's done on radio stations and with conservative talk show hosts like Moon Griffon on his network and those kind of things. Haven't seen much of her around Southeast Louisiana, though. She did not even show up to the St. Tammany Parish endorsement meeting that we had. So not sure how well she can do if she's not reaching out to the part of the state that has the most voters in it. So the jury's still out on that.
I see.
The other thing in the state is that it seems to be fairly quiet, but I will tell you this, and this is for you Republican voters that are out there in the state of Louisiana. There are offices springing up on the blue side all over the state in towns. They have a lot of funding at the grassroots level on the Democrat side, and we had better not be asleep at the wheel if the Republicans want to maintain control of the House of Representatives for sure. And actually, some people are saying the Senate could in fact be in play. We're seeing reports the U.S. Senate could be in play for us. So from a state election standpoint in Louisiana, we may be seen as a very red state, but if you don't get out and vote, you will not stay very red because a lot of resources are being poured into a lot of states. And we're hearing anecdotally again that blue wave offices are being established all around the state in small towns to big cities.
That's absolutely amazing. Now, speaking of elections, I'm going to shift gears for a second, and I'm putting up a little screen right now. Campaigns and elections. It's a new website and some webinars that were coming up. First of all, let me just mention about the website real quickly. And this is the home. This is kind of what the home page looks like. It's from electionswin.com. electionswin.com, and I call this in sort of an emporium. That is, you can buy whatever you want, in a sense about elections. It's the Alice's restaurant of elections, and so we have webinars coming up that you're going to be talking about, and we have books and all kind of things that people can actually um, buy. So let me put up the next slide, and I'll let you know when it comes up. Okay, and it is up, and it's the Retail Politics, Political Climate, and Analytics. Go ahead.
Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak about electionswin.com. That's the website. I've got the website up on my broadcast also. We are partnering, my company, Iron Liberty Group LLC, is partnering with BayouBuzz.com to bring you these webinars. And the webinars are going to have guests like the first webinars on September 17th in the evening. That's this coming Monday. Bernie Pinsonet and Jim Brown. Bernie is a renowned pollster, very reliable most of the time. And I'm just kidding there. That was an inside joke. But Bernie's a very reliable poster. Lots of folks use him. The folks, when they really want to know what's happening and what people think in Louisiana, it's usually the Pinsonet team that gets asked to do it and hired to do it. So Jim Brown is a longtime Louisiana politician and analyst. And that show, I'm going to be watching that show. So, and you can sign up for one of these webinars, or you can sign up for all of them. One webinar is $25. The whole package right now you can get for $50. And on September 22nd, political consultant Greg Buisson, who has and does work for lots of successful politicians, both in statewide races all the way down to parish council, mayors, and those kind of things. He is going to be doing the second webinar on the 22nd of September. And then the 27th of September is huge, folks. If you are ever interested in politics, that to win a campaign, it's all about the money and how much you can raise and how fast you can raise it and what donors you can get to support you, and then how you spend it. So the raising part of it, we have the absolute best national level person that's a fundraiser, both in the state of Louisiana and the entire country. Best in the nation is what she's been rated. Her name is Allie Bash, and she is a wonderful fundraiser. I've worked with her team personally before and had an extremely good experience. So that's on September 27th, and you don't want to miss that. If you can only do one of these, take your piggy bank, break it, get the $25 out of it, and sign up for that webinar on September 27th with Allie Bash. The nation's best political fundraiser is what she's been rated many, many times across the nation. And then the last one scheduled so far is September 29th with Jim Falwell, a political analyst, and Ed Shermanack, another pollster, but this time from the world of academia, and the University of New Orleans is state renowned. Really, from my experience, his polls really dive down into the details and are really good for local level elections and citywide elections in large cities like New Orleans. So we expect to have an absolutely wonderful turnout. Take advantage of that early bird special right now. It ends Monday night, September 17th, and you can get the whole package for $50. And Steve tells me that when he begins to add more seminars, he may open that window up again, but don't count on that. Take advantage of the early bird special now. Go to electionswin.com and sign up for these webinars that start Monday night, September 17th. Thank you.
That was great, Rob, actually. And let me just close out that window real quick and get us back to where we were. Bear with me. Okay, there we are. So we're back to where we're supposed to be on my side. And by the way, let me just tell you what we're doing here. These are not just webinars. These are webinars and experiences. So in other words, they're going to present. Our speakers will present, and people will be able to ask them questions via Facebook. You will have to use your Facebook contact to be able to participate. And so afterwards, we'll put a transcript together. So those people who actually paid and participated will have access to some of the real nuggets of the webinar. In addition to that, we're putting Facebook groups together. So for each one of these shows, those people who watch will be able to participate in a Facebook group about that subject. So it's an experience. It's not just a one-time event. And obviously, the more that you participate more of these Facebook groups that you're able to actually access. So this is the first of its kind in the world. I can tell you that without doubt. Online, webinar, Facebook group, website, selling all kind of elections related books, ebooks, you name it. Electionswin.com. I just wanted to make that pitch. Go ahead.
Thanks for letting me have an opportunity to talk about it, Steve. I'm excited about it. Been in politics and just got into politics after spending 32 and a half years in the U.S. military. And I wish we'd have had this 5 years ago because it's going to really help people that have never done it before get into that business and make a difference with a much higher rate of success, I believe.
And in fact, I had mentioned to you that I personally would like for you to do a webinar and talk about, because a lot of people who are doing grassroots, and that's really what your election was about. And so maybe that would be a real good focus. Although I will say this, that if you do it before the elections, you probably help the Democrats because there's so many grassroots in terms of, like, you talk about the blue wave. So let me just say this: those people who are watching, please go ahead, and if you have any comments that you want to make, go ahead and make those comments. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask those questions. Be looking online, and if you see anything that you want to comment upon, please go ahead and bring it up. And also, if you're watching, please share. Charles Masala. I'm sorry. Charles, really good guy, former mayor, city in California. Love to hear from him too. So Charles, please go ahead and if you have a question, go ahead and ask. So let's just talk about the blue wave for a second, if you don't mind. Every Tuesday morning I do a radio show with Jeff Carrere, and the issue came up whether or not the president is a liability or an asset for the Republican Party. He made a really good point. And that good point was that so far, just about every election that the president has backed, the candidate has won. Obviously, didn't happen in Alabama, and I think maybe one other race, if I'm not mistaken, but certainly not Alabama. But that was a very unique situation. So I'm just wondering, do you think that he has these coattails, or do you think that perhaps based upon some of the polls where he's actually beginning to drop 2, 3, 5 points, do you think that maybe those coattails are shorter? What do you think?
Well, first of all, excuse me. As far as the polls go, Steve, you and I both know, and I'm not sure if people realize this or not, it's a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
A poll is only a snapshot in time. So everything hinges on when certain polls are taken. And what you've got to look at is polling over time. I recommend folks go to a site called realclearpolitics.com. They actually do a RCP average, and even though the outcome may not be what you want, that average is the closest thing, I believe, that you can get to at least a semi-accurate feeling of where somebody's at. But We always have to remember on Donald Trump, though, in 2016, the polls were completely out to lunch. And I believe that many of them continue to be out to lunch when you see, especially the political consultant and polling, the pollsters are part of that class. They have a tough time even today acknowledging why the man won. So you mentioned some of the races that he got endorsed candidates and they lost. One of them was a congressional race where the candidate was a terrible candidate from a Trump-based perspective, and she was just what we call a rhino, a Republican in name only, that really didn't support the president in his presidential race. And I think he followed some poor advice from that consultant class and that political class in Washington, D.C. when he got behind her. And you mentioned the race in Alabama. He got behind the establishment individual that was appointed to the seat first and came in for Roy Moore late. So we have that too. And Moore didn't lose by that much, even though he was viciously attacked with undocumented attacks on these sexual peccadillos with young women. That none of them have ever gone to court. He's never been charged with anything. They all of a sudden just disappeared after the man lost. So I think his poor reputation got trashed pretty hard. But even with that, if the president had gotten behind Moore originally, I believe there would have been a slightly different outcome, and Moore would be in the Senate today, quite frankly. So to get to your main question is, does he have the coattails? Yes, he has the coattails if he gets behind the right candidates. And right now, what I've seen is he's gotten behind the right candidates. If they're insiders, they've been with his agenda for quite some time and have shown through their voting, and by insiders I mean people already in office. They've shown with their voting records that they support the America First policies and agenda. I mean, there may be some outlier votes there, but I think the president's really taken a hard look at these folks now himself instead of just listening to consultants. And when he gets behind an outsider, they generally do very, very well. So I do think he has coattails. I don't think the predictions of the blue wave that we saw early in the summer are going to hold up. However, I do believe that, and we are seeing it, you are seeing Democrats turn out in the primaries much, much higher than they were in 2014. And that's the foundation race that everybody's using. So they are energized on the left side of the political spectrum at the grassroots level. And as I mentioned earlier, these offices are popping up all over the state of Louisiana. So there's a lot of resources coming in from those organizations that are funded by big dollar, big deep pocket donors on the Democrat side. And we haven't seen that type of energy on the Republican side. So that gives you pause for concern, because generally in a midterm election, the president's party that's in power, if they have both houses of Congress, by and large, you see them lose one or the other or both in the midterms. If there's a lack of energy, is what the professional consultant class likes to say. I think it's iffy, personally, from what I've seen. And the president's base is extremely strong, and he continues to strengthen it every single day by pushing them back against the corporate media, and pushing back against even the establishment politicians in his own party. And his base just gets stronger and stronger with that. But he's going to have to, at some point, start broadening that base so that he can win re-election. And if he doesn't do it, continue to, or start doing that now, then the midterms are in play.
Okay, so we have a comment. Lynn Matthews says that's true. Very true, Rob. Thank you, Lynn, for the comment. And Pam Till Traina wants to tell you hello. And so again, please go ahead and share the video so more people are able to watch Rob come up with these very erudite comments. And so I'm going to disagree, obviously. No, but I respect what you're saying, and that is that look, the day of the 26 November 9, 2016 election, which has I mean, I remember the date probably go down in infamy, and I will tell you this, that basically that day I wrote, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think that Clinton can win either really big, or she can win, or she can lose really big. I just don't know about these polls. So, I wasn't ready to go there. And I agree with you about the polls. I think that uh, that Trump has the ability, if he is focused, I think he has the ability to really harness a lot of energy. The problem is that, right now he's losing the independents, according to, some of the polls, the CNN poll in particular. Um, and I think that if you look at the body of polls, like you said, Real Clear Politics, I think that so far it seems like even Rasmus's poll, the last I looked, showed that Trump was down 2 points, and so um, he's losing the independents. He's losing he's losing some of the men. He's losing the women. But where he really has problems, I think, is the independents. Now, he's not. I mean, he's not running. He's not on a ballot, but he says he is, and he framed it like that during the rally just the other day. And so, obviously, if I were a Democrat, I would use that and say, look, this is about Donald Trump. Okay, if you want to have Donald Trump in office, uncontrolled, unchecked, okay, then go ahead and vote for him. So I don't know. It's the thing is that back in 2016, he didn't have a political record. He didn't have an election record. He didn't have an administrative record. Now he does. You can agree with it, disagree with it, agree with parts, disagree with parts. Mm-hmm. But I think the poll kind of reflect that that we're worn down by it all, and we're looking at least for a sense of normalcy. And so, under no means am I saying that the Democrats, the more they choose people from Brooklyn who are socialists, to me, I agree with Jimmy Carter. The worse they'll be. Go ahead.
Well, let's take a look at
Sure.
at how things are under this president. Let's just talk about the facts. The facts are that unemployment's at the lowest rate that it's been in a long, long time, way beyond the last administration and the administration before that. Workplace participation is back. Because of that, the unemployment rate that you see is more valid than it was during both the Bush years, the W. Bush years, and the Obama years. Because as that workplace participation rate improves, the accuracy of the unemployment rate actually come to meet each other. Because when it's really high, the workplace
Right.
participation rate, the unemployment rate's not. It's a lagging indicator, and it's not keeping up with that. So I think that's good. The policies of what a lot of folks on the base in the Democrat, Independent, and Republican base is the politics of the global economy is being put where it ought to be, a second priority to the American economy. I think the president is doing a good job of that, and he's doing what he said he would do. And I'm a free market guy. I was skeptical, but now we see that the European Union is not only come back to the table and is allowing liquefied natural gas to be imported into the EU market now from the United States of America and from right here in Louisiana, folks. We're not only doing that, but now they've come back to the table and they want to go to zero tariffs on cars. That would be unbelievable in any administration that was headed by either of the establishment parties. I call them the uniparty in Washington, D.C. They're more aligned. Those people are more aligned together than they are with one party of the other or the other. And all of their economic policies were not the right priority for America. And the America First policies are. And what does all that mean? That means that manufacturing jobs in this nation have increased into hundreds of thousands over any of the changes that have occurred in the last 40 years from what I read this week. So, and the mainstream media is not talking about that. That's just the economic side of it. I think the president so far is doing a fairly effective job on the foreign policy side. I think obviously the jury is still out, and he admitted this at the very beginning with the North Korea negotiations. This could fail. But if you don't take the risk to try to come to a peaceful agreement and denuclearize the Korean Peninsula, and maybe even have the chance to unify the darn thing in a peaceful way that brings peace to that region of the world, then you haven't really done a good job. And I think the president is doing a good job with that. Of course, the jury's still out. Same thing with the Iranians. The Iranians are all mad again. The madder the Iranians are and publicly stomping their feet and throwing tantrums and everything at the great Satan, the United States of America, the better off we are, because they tend to ratchet back and wind back their regional influence and their regional meddling, which is something that is a goal of the United States of America, is to stop Iran from doing regional meddling and prevent them from becoming the regional biggest power or hegemonic power, as they say in the foreign policy world, in that region. And that's been the great danger of all the missteps in the Middle East since 2003, when the Iraq War was started. All of those missteps, the greatest danger has been the Iranians gaining more and more regional control and power, and a power base there, in addition to their desire and goals to have nuclear weapons. So I think he's taken the right steps so far. We see German companies every day. I see a tweet from the German U.S. ambassador to Germany, Richard Grenell, who is the first gay ambassador to Europe, appointed by a president, and that was President Trump that appointed him. But most importantly, that's for the identity politics folks, okay, on the left, that are thinking about not voting for Donald Trump. But the best thing about him is he is engaged as an ambassador, and the Germans are the central power in the European Union. And when I see day-to-day German companies withdrawing themselves voluntarily from dealing with the Iranians, that is a huge step, and the corporate media is not reporting it. So that's just a small window into where we're at from the president's policies. And you notice I haven't said anything about the stupidity of chasing ghosts of Russian meddling in the campaign. The stupidity of not focusing on not only Russia, but China, North Korea, Iran, in their cyber operations against us in the 2016 campaign. And beforehand, remember I mentioned last week, the 2008 presidential campaign, China hacked into both McCain and Obama's campaigns, and nobody seemed to care about it. So we haven't even mentioned those things yet. And I'm very concerned that we haven't been focused on making sure that our cyber defensive operations, both nationally and at the state level, because it's at the state level that they're the most important to prevent meddling in our cyber operations, in our campaigns, and the influence operations that we saw on social media and those kind of things. I'm very concerned that we haven't been focused on that because of the stupidity of these other things, like the ghosts that we're chasing on Trump's people meddling in the campaign. Now, Trump's numbers have gone down in the last few weeks, according to the polls. We see that's a trend. The number you can debate, as I said, and you said, there are snapshots in time, but he had a couple of very bad weeks. Not a good reasons for him, really. Manafort's trial had nothing to do with the Trump campaign or the administration, but he got found guilty on 8 of the 19 counts. in his first trial, and and Papadopoulos pled guilty. But now that we're seeing from George Papadopoulos that it certainly looks like it was an counterintelligence operation run by U.S. and allied intelligence agencies against him to try to get him to say something, to try to get him to let them try to meddle in the campaign, and to admit that the Russians were meddling in the campaign. I just think that's atrocious. And when you listen to the man's interviews on CNN, and I think he did one even on MSNBC, you just see that he's crushed by his failure to tell the truth to the FBI personally. But he's also got a story to tell, and it's not about Russian meddling in the Trump campaign. It's about our meddling in the Trump campaign on behalf of the Democratic Party, and that's unfortunate.
Okay,
so when you look at the facts, I think the president's done pretty well.
So what I'll do is I'm going to read some of these comments. We have a bunch of comments, if you don't mind, and pardon me. And so Teresa Oliver, if that's Olivier, they listened to polls last election, big mistake, and I agree with that. How many people are watching, she asked, and I can tell you that we get about 2,000 without any kind of promotions, any advanced promotion, which I think is really outstanding. She questions also about the CNN poll. Really, she says, look, I think that you have to look at the totality of all the polls and the trends, and I think that all the trends of all the polls are indicating the same thing. So does that mean that they're fixed? No. It means that, like Rob said, they are a snapshot in time. And in my opinion, they can go up and down on a dime. So to ignore them, I think, is wrong. To put too much stock in polls, I believe, also are very wrong, too. Lynn Matthews says they will attempt to close the Straits of Hormuz, meaning that's when you were talking about Iran. Pardon me. And also she says, I read the EU will try to do reverse sanctions on companies that refuse to do business with Iran. Connie Zimmerman made a comment, and I'm just going to summarize. She asks you whether or not she says, my understanding is that communism is illegal in the United States and that it would violate the Bill of Rights. No, I disagree. I don't like communism. I don't like socialism, but it's not illegal. And so in your exposure to the people in elected government, why don't our elected officials point that out, that the left are attempting a communist overthrow of our republic? Or do they talk about it and the media never covers it? I have to disagree with you, Connie. An overthrow, a communist overthrow, I think that you do have a situation where you have some people who are, that I don't think should be, in my opinion, should be in Congress. I certainly, one of the people who was last on my list was Bernie Sanders. He called himself a socialist. I have to accept that he's a socialist. Communist overthrow, I'm sorry, Rob, I just don't see it. I'm not saying I'm not saying there aren't, I mean, look, a lot of people are saying in terms of the tax thing, the legislation that passed, they're also looking at the fact that we are going deeper and deeper into debt, and it's one of the things that you didn't mention. That our debt is growing faster and faster, and the president said he was going to eliminate the debt. So, I think that just like he blamed Obama for the debt and masking the economy, or the economy masking the debt, it seems to me that we're seeing pretty much the same. Go ahead.
Well, let's put the debt in the right context. And you're right. I did forget to mention that But let's put it in the right context. Under the 8 years of the Obama administration, we went from approximately $11 trillion in debt to almost $22 trillion in debt. Now, when this president shows me that he's going to have a trend that does that again, then I'll start getting worried. I didn't worry much about the Obama administration doing deficit spending. I've learned throughout my lifetime that deficit spending is different than adding to the national debt. The real threat is that $22 trillion of national debt. Excuse me. So we do need to make sure we're keeping an eye on them about the deficit spending, so that it doesn't continue the trend that Obama started and basically double the debt and add more debt that's been added in all the presidencies of the United States.
But the debt is actually accelerating, though. It's accelerating.
No, it's not accelerating.
It is.
No, it's not. I disagree with that.
Okay.
The deficit spending is going to rise and fall, and I'll just repeat it again. I wasn't concerned about it in the Obama years either. Deficit spending. What I'm concerned about, and what everybody ought to be concerned about, is the national debt itself. The increase of debt's going to happen because this president has gone into deficit spending with this Congress, and they're going to do it again if they pass version 2 of the tax bill and make the individual tax cuts permanent, which they should have done in the first place. It appears they've played politics with that to try to help themselves on the midterms. We'll see what happens with that, but they need to have a plan to start cutting and show us free marketers and pro-liberty Republicans, especially in the base, which is Mr. Trump's base too. Those people in that base, that's what they believe. What I just said. I've run to get their votes before and achieved it in a small way, much smaller way, obviously, than Mr. Trump has. So he's going to have to start showing that he's going to cut this budget and get this budget under control, and not just cut Social Security either, or Medicare and Medicaid, those kind of things. But let's talk a little bit about Connie's concern. According to the Constitution of the United States, it is the federal government's role and responsibility and duty to ensure a Republican form of government is operated by each state and maintained by each state on behalf of the American people. So a Republican form of government is required by law. And that doesn't mean that not me, but that doesn't mean that Bernie Sanders can't run as a Communist Party member and win and hold a seat.
Boy, but he's not a communist.
You can do that. You can do that.
But he's not a communist. He is a socialist.
Yeah, he is.
No. Well, you see, okay.
Steve, he's a Democrat socialist. The man did his honeymoon in the Soviet Union. It wasn't Russia then. It was the Soviet Union, for God's sake. The man's a communist, and I don't give a damn who says what. I'm gonna defend my comments on that. And that's not conspiracy theory. It's based on the facts. He can call himself a social democrat or a socialist or whatever. I don't care. All of that leads to socialism. Whether it's from the Nazi Party or the Communist Party, socialism leads to totalitarianism in some form or another. You can call it whatever ism you want at the end, Nazism or communism. It's all the same thing, in my opinion. And the American people that throw that around a lot, especially the Nazi Party, need to learn that really quick, or they're going to find themselves in a totalitarian state if they keep electing too many of these people. And it doesn't matter whether they're considered right or left or not. So Connie is right in that it is our responsibility to maintain, and the law in the Constitution of the United States, to maintain a Republican form of government. Anybody ever tries to take that over and replace it with a style of government that, say, the Soviet Union had or Nazi Germany had, and that's where you start getting into the law breaking. But you can be a member if you think you can get elected and run as a Communist Party member. Go right ahead. Bernie Sanders has been elected many times, openly stating he's a socialist Democrat, or whatever they call that thing. So, but it is in the Constitution of the United States, and it is our duty to make sure that we have a Republican form of government, which is a representative democracy, the way the founders intended it, in some form or another, and even at the state level, it's a requirement.
So let me just ask you this one question, and I think we're running late, and so we need to wrap it up. But so what you're saying is that we are mandated by a constitution to be a republic, meaning that we have to have votes. We have to have elections.
Right.
Okay? So they have elections in China and they have elections in Russia. I mean, you can communism is an economic structure. It's not
Are
a
you really comparing elections in
no, no,
this
no. Well, hold on.
communist China to American elections?
No, let me finish what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying
I'm
is,
just checking.
no, 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 no. Communism is an economic structure. It's not a political one. So, to say as long as you have elections, and if this country decided to vote in Sanders, which I would be totally against, but if they decided to do that, okay, does that mean that they're violating the Constitution? No. If they voted for this, then they're doing exactly what the Constitution says. So that's why, again, communism is not a political structure. It is it is dogma that is economic based. So that's why I disagree.
I've got to correct you on that, Steve. You're flat out incorrect. The form of communism that we're discussing here, that I'm talking about, and I clarified it in my comments, is like the old Soviet Union or the other ism, the Nazism, like Germany, where the government takes control of the process of production and the assets associated with that, and the government's employees from the top to the bottom make decisions on who gets the wealth from those, who gets the outcome of that production, and makes those decisions on production that are outside of economic free market norms. So that is not only an economic system, that is a form of government that we are not going to have in the United States, because our law says you're not going to do that. And if, say, Bernie Sanders got elected and he tried to implement and impose that kind of system on the United States, because he goes like every other imperialist type president, and the current occupant of the office is not immune to this either, and decides he wants to be an imperial president, and I'm going to impose this on the American people, then the American people's duty would be to rise up and enforce the Constitution, either through their representatives or worse, if we had to go that far. So that's the difference between what I'm talking about and just the economic system. But I don't think communism or as an economic system could ever take hold in the United States or even the global market. I mean, even communist China has had to bend to the capitalist economic system, and it's done very well for the people that are in power in that communist government. By the way, it hasn't done a damn thing for the working man and woman that are like the Muslims that are in internment camps right now, getting re-educated, which would never happen in the United States, right? The Democrats never interred a whole people because of their race or their religion, right? Like the Japanese, so that's not going to happen, even if Bernie Sanders were to be elected to, and that's because Bernie takes an oath to the Constitution, and the Constitution says it's his role as the president of the United States, if we were to be elected, to ensure a Republican form of government, and that includes in the states. If a state tried to do it, it would be the responsibility of the federal government to enforce that. And go in and take over and reestablish a Republican form of government. We've never had to see that in the United States of America, but the clause is there for a reason. The founders were smart guys.
Okay,
so they knew that this kind of stuff could happen, and the American people should have an opportunity to vote for somebody like that. If that's what it's, I mean, they elected the Socialist Democrat in New York's congressional primary. We'll see if she wins. Odds are she will, based on the district, from what I understand. So that's and we have Muslims in Congress and those kind of things. A lot of people don't like it, but according to the law and according to the way the United States of America operates in our real elections, in our true elections, not the fake ones like in the communist world or the Nazi world, where they win by like 90% of the vote. Our elections are reliable, and even with all of the hoo-ha that's gone on, they're still reliable. And the president of the United States won dramatically in the Electoral College, defeating his opponent 309 to 222 or 23 Electoral College votes, which is a tremendous defeat.
Okay. Well, we're going to, so we really just, I guess, disagree on the definition. And that's really where we disagree. I mean, neither one of us want to have any kind of overthrow. And so there's some question about that. The issue is whether or not you can vote in a socialist government and whether you can vote in an even greater extreme, a communist government. And I'm saying that theoretically you can. Now, the question is what happens, once you do that, and if they do impose some type of dictatorial government, then whether they're communists or whether they're on the other extreme, then I think that they're engaging in acts that are violative of the Constitution. So I think,
they would need the United States Armed Forces to do that, and they wouldn't have the United States Armed Forces to try to oppose that because they are non-political and they take an oath to the Constitution, not some political party or individual. And I know presidents on both sides have tried to say you're loyal to me. That's baloney. I did it for I've done that for all of my life, and the veterans, the 20-something million veterans in this country, would also be standing in the breach to prevent that kind of thing from happening. That would be a dire circumstance if we were ever to get there. But I think it does raise a good question because since the early 1900s and the age of big government started, and we imposed the income tax on the individual through a constitutional amendment, we have adopted socialist policies, and the more of those that you adopt, the more of other people's money you're going to spend, and that's why we have these discussions now about the debt and the deficit and spending and those kind of things, because the Constitution is very clear. There's very few things that the president's that the federal government's required to spend dollars on. National defense is one, ensuring interstate commerce is another, and those kind of things. So these socialist policies are really extra constitutional, like Social Security, for instance, those kind of things. And the more we go down that road, the more danger there is that there will be enough people that vote that way to try to establish a type of government like what's in Venezuela right now. And you see that's another place where the government, they took over private property, they nationalized manufacturing, they nationalized oil production, they nationalized everything, and now even the wealthy are eating garbage on the streets and trying to get out of the country. So that's why we have to have these debates, and they have to be very vigorous debates to make sure that everybody understands when they go to cast that vote that you're casting it for very, very important reasons, and you're determining the future of the United States for your great-grandchildren sometimes when you cast those votes. So we are in a interesting time, and we do have to take great care because we have implemented some of these socialist policies that could lead down that road to an attempt to establish more of that totalitarian type government.
Okay. I'm not going to disagree with that. So let us wrap it up. And listen, Rob, Colonel Maness, I really thank you for participating with us again. Try to do this every Friday and Friday morning. And again, those people, don't forget about the webinars that are coming up starting this Monday, and we'll get information out about that. So want to thank those people watching. Please go ahead and hit the share button so that more people have an opportunity to watch the shows. We get these numbers up to well over 2,000. So I really thank you very much, Rob. So I'm going to shut this down on my side.
Well, thank you, Steve. And I just want to remind everybody the Rob Maness Show on CRTV is going to be debuting in the next few weeks around the end of September, first part of October. I'll keep everybody advise through my social media and obviously on here. But this little show has will continue. Obviously, I love doing it. But the weekly Rob Maness show on CRTV will be me in long form interview format with experience-based truth tellers to see if we can fight some of this fake news, no matter who puts it out.
Okay.